So what we did was break it into 4 different building types. So we have the original traditional 2-flat and how it looks amongst its neighbors.
I'm sorry, Lynsey, would you mind using the microphone?
Yeah.
Is it on? No?
Hello?
If it's green, it's on.
If it's green, it's on, but I don't know where it's connecting to. Okay, I'll project.
No, it's on if you put it close to your mouth.
Okay, so the second example is what you can build by right in, so our neighborhood, the blanket zoning is RS3. And so, I don't know if this is actually working. So what you can build by RS3 is then studied in comparison to the traditional 2-flat. Next to that would be, what if you got upzoned? What if you were, the next zoning designation is, and what if that allows you a greater height? It allows you more square footage to build, but it also is an increased height. So this is a 3-story building versus the larger zoning, but building a bigger building because you can with the square footage. And then we looked at this hybrid of, back to the original example we had was convert a 2-flat and just add a partial 3rd story. And then, because I'm an architect, we then took it to, well, what would we prefer the zoning to be? How would we like the city to just change the zoning ordinance to reflect or to better ameliorate some of the problems that we're experiencing with flooding? So in a 2-flat, this is the typical layout. You typically find that the backyard is larger than what the current zoning would require you to do. So in zoning, you have a thing where you have a setback requirement, but then there's also, you can build a garage within that setback. And a lot of the modern garages are much larger than the kind of fabric of the neighborhood. And so then there's an open space requirement. It's very small, it's 15 feet. So what can you grow in 15 feet when you have these large buildings? So that's kind of showing you that our typical housing stock is considerably smaller than what the city currently allows you to build. Versus, that would be great. I don't know why it's not advancing though.
Did it advance?
Was it
No.
this one?
No, I was just using the cursors before. Oh, there we go. Oh, now we're like
So it's
catching
the
up.
down-
We've gone
the
way
down.
too far.
Okay, yeah, so it's
I
a
think
down.
it's the down one.
I think it's just
Maybe not.
fast. Okay. So then so if you look at this little floor plan and you see, floop, the next one, this is what people are building now by right. This is what we're seeing. So it's considerably larger. The area in the back is very small. And then the secondary discussion that we're not, well, is the pergolas on top of the garages. That's one of the other topics that we've discussed, but that doesn't pertain to runoff. So in this you can see we did a sort of standard calculation assuming that the building, the garage, and the side yard is paved in concrete or some impermeable surface, and then there's your stoop. You get 76 gallons per minute in a 100-year storm. And could you go back to the one before? And in our 2-flat, it's 74 gallons per minute. Now, I know 2 gallons doesn't sound that much, but if you think the 50-gallon rain barrels, well, that would fill up in 25 minutes in a storm. So the delta between that, it's a lot of water. The difference between that 2 gallons per minute adds up to a lot. So then if we go to the next example, so on to the next one. So then this is this idea of, well, what if you allow people the higher level of zoning? You can see that the building is back to being in line with our typical buildings. It is taller. Everyone's like, well, it's going to create the shadows. And what we show is that because of this Chicago lot, the dimension of it's very narrow and long, it doesn't actually cast more of a shadow on your neighbor. So this is south-facing properties. It's done at this right now, spring equinox, and you can see that the shadows are the same as the neighbors. And if you go to the one before, you'll see how much shadow is cast on the neighbor to the east by right building. And that was really what we were looking at, because the sense from people was that these 3-story buildings were going to shade the neighbors. It's not the height that shades, it's the depth of the building. So we have the runoff and the shading. So then if we go forward, and then our next example would be, this would be the worst case scenario where you have a larger building, but they keep it 2 stories, and essentially they build out the whole thing. And again, this is by right. It's a zoning change to get the higher blanket ordinance, but you only end up with 12 feet of open area in the back of the building. So then if we go to the next one, this is where we're saying, okay, the 2 flats don't always respond to the way that people are wanting to live now. As an architect, people want open plan areas. They want the rumpus room or the big family room. Kids aren't sharing bedrooms. Maybe granny and grandpa are coming for extended periods of time. So they need, the desire to kind of open up the floor plate is strong. And so how do you respond to that without tearing the building down? And how do you make sure, we have a lot of real estate agents on the zoning committee, and rightly they're concerned about property values. How are we going to keep the property values? How are we going to keep the people in the area with the schools? This is a bad example architecturally, but this shows a converted 2-flat with this 2-story or 3rd-story addition. It's set back from the street. It's not, looming over your neighbor, but it's giving you that increased square footage for the family room or the home office, whatever people are doing it for. But you'll see, again, it doesn't impact the shading relative to just the building itself. And then the last example is where we said, here's what we would like the zoning changes to reflect. So right now, the reason that we have the look of most of Chicago streets is the front setback is an average of your neighbor's setback. So you can't be that much farther forward in the street, you can't be much further back, it's an average. And that then makes everybody's front yard fair, in my opinion. Why don't we apply the same logic to the rear setback so that you can't build a building that occupies half of the feel of your neighbor's backyard? And so in this we were looking at, let people have that increase in height so they can still build the square footage of our original zoning, but just go taller. So here you see 2-story in the front with this pop-up in the back. This example is in West Town, where the zoning ordinances are different. There aren't examples in North Centre because they haven't been allowed yet. But it kind of gives you the sense of, it respects the neighborhood scaling, front yard, and then the backyard it keeps that social backyard fabric intact. And then we're back down to 70 gallons per minute of runoff because the building has to be a bit smaller because they have the height. So that's how we, if we had our druthers, we were actually going to convince the alderman to change the zoning ordinance, which is a huge lift, but we're going to chip away at it. So that's where we are with our analysis of it.
Question. I see people with patios between the huge house and the garage,
Yep.
which decreases the permeable space to virtually nothing. Are there any zoning regulations about permeability?
No, Alderman Pawar is trying to have permeability embedded into the zoning. Right now it's just open space and you can pave it, you can do whatever you want with it. And so he has been trying since his last term to get permeability. It's just that one word inserted in and he hasn't been able to get it to happen.
Because what's the resistance? Who's resisting?
Well, I think a lot of people feel that if they, with that 12 feet of space, not much grows in it anyway because it gets all this shade, and so they want to put down hardscape. Although there are products now that are hardscape that are permeable, but they're still pretty expensive, and I think that's what people face.
Not that much more expensive.
Well, I know, but
that's the argument. Is it's an expense?
Yeah.
And I think we just need to convince them that that the delta between the two is not so great, and the costs. I mean, I don't want to steal Burrell's thunder, but it's not necessarily that you get flooding in your new house; it's that your neighbors get flooding.
Right,
So,
and that's the very good point. Right.
yeah, currently there's commercial properties have to have a stormwater management plan. Residences under a certain size do not, so you can pave the thing and have no permeable. Good question. I don't know.
Obviously, they're too flat.
No. Right. So, any other question?
I just have, as the law stands now, if someone buys a lot, a two flat, and wants to tear it down and build something else, they're limited by total square footage, so they can go out as far as they want if they don't build up, or
No, this
it's
is-
one or the other?
No, it's a combination, so that your FAR is your floor area ratio, so the amount of lot that you have under RS3, you can build 0.9 of your lot can be built upon. We have a height restriction that basically limits you to a 2-story building. Basements don't count if they're 50% below. So you have a height restriction and you have a depth restriction because of the setback and the open area. So you have to set your building back. You can then build your garage. 60% of your rear setback area can be built upon with a garage. And then you have to maintain this open area requirement. And go to the appendices has the actual numbers in it. So in RS, I think it's like 17 feet. You have to maintain 17 feet of open area between the back of your garage, or the front of your garage and the back of your house.
Yeah, I just was curious how it restricts
Yeah.
building.
So it's this like volume of the house and how much area you build on your lot. So if you have a large lot, bigger building.
So I am from a neighboring community, just about a half mile that way, in the Graceland West area. So I really am admiring your integration with the aldermen. Okay, so we're not doing that as well, and so this is the compliment to you. And do they respect your opinions and your thoughts and your feedback, or is it simply sometimes just overlooked? I don't know who's here.
No, I think, well, so I've only been on the committee for a little over a year, and my predecessors worked very, very hard to get the aldermen to take us seriously, and it has been an uphill battle, because a lot of times we would send letters and then he would reject the plans anyway, and we didn't know why. So there's a slight disconnect. He doesn't share his rationale as to why he doesn't accept something, but he does take our letter on board, and increasingly he has been asking for our input. So the community as a whole has worked hard to engage with him, and this current alderman is like night and day to his predecessor in terms of his willingness to listen. Unfortunately, he says he's not going to run again. So.
Thank you. Very compliments to you. It's just great. It's a model for other communities.
Any other questions? Thank you.